years, and that goal for the coming fiscal year is 8.7%. And federal regulations require setting of statewide goals every 3 years. And the question is, do you believe this is a fair and equitable distribution, given the population of the community? If so, why? If not, why not? And what would you advocate for? And we'll start with Joe Mullery.
Thank you. This minority contracting by the state is a subject that I've spent more time on than any legislator over there, and I really do think the goals should be higher, but you also have to be really careful when you're bouncing around these numbers. For instance, I think in DBEs, it's near 13%, but only for subcontractors, but only 6 or 7% for prime contractors. And we need to bump that up for primes, because that's where we want to be in the long run. However, you have to do a disparity study, which costs about $500,000 to $1 million to set goals, according to the Croson federal case. It's not just based on the percentage of minorities in the population, but also on the number of members of that minority group who can do the work, which is a contracting, and some there isn't. So you can't just go by strict numbers there without knowing the background. The DBE is a federal program, so we can't distinguish between women and minorities, but the TGB is state-funded programs in several agencies, and there I'd like to split up women from minorities and probably even split minorities into racial groupings so that we don't have one group getting all of the state contracting. But right now, we're talking only about TGBs, and they don't even have a strict TGB program functioning in the Department of Transportation. In fact, I just had it in my office about that about 3 weeks ago. And
I have to go.
You don't win a marathon by setting a goal of finishing half of it. And we can just talk about these numbers, but let's face it, there are so many challenges to people in this district that we all need to strive for more. That setting a goal that's less than the population doesn't bring everyone up, and we need to shoot for success for all members of this community. And so I don't think it's a fair and equitable distribution.
David Boyd.
As a contractor, this falls right to my heart. It's very hard out there being a minority contractor from North Minneapolis to get jobs, period. Even though I have a training and skill for over 20 years of doing what I'm doing, it is really hard to break through the good old boys club. I'm just going to be straight out and put it that way. Okay? Without the skill training and the proper amount of staff, the jobs aren't going to be there for you. You get through the door, you work hard to get through, but there's, for one reason or another, you're not moving on. It could be color, it could be anything. It's just, it happens. The main thing is getting the training, and as David said earlier, we're all in this game together. You know, we've got to spread it out. There's so many people out there that are hurting in our district, being of every color. So we just need to move forward. It is not equitable, but at the same time, being a minority contractor, we just got to strive to keep moving forward and not think about these statistics. Just think about what we need to make our community and us as minority contractors stronger and more viable to the system.
John Olson.
I think the number needs to be higher, but I do agree that we should proceed with caution. We don't want to set an unrealistic goal. And once we've got that goal established, we really need to go after construction projects like the transit, stadium, housing development, those types of things that are going to provide the opportunities. It's great to set a goal, but you got to have the jobs out there available, which means we have to have projects for these contractors to get in on and put people to work. So setting the goal a little bit higher is nice, but it's extremely important that we do the other end and make sure the work is available.
Marcus Harkins.
Thank you. Well, I did some work with a group called The Collaborative, which is made up of the Minnesota Department of Transportation, large general contractors, some smaller contractors, subcontractors, Air Minnesota, and others. And we were developing some good programs, like mentor protege programs. Well, first of all, let me answer the question. I do think that it's not necessarily fair to have a goal that is half of the rate of the population of people of color, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think that quotas are always achieving their intended consequences, intended goals. I do think that the state should hold these contractors accountable more, because when they sign these contracts with the state, they're agreeing to achieve these goals, which I think are very, very modest goals, and they're not ambitious enough. I think we need to reenact the targeted business group program, which Joe referred to. It was killed in 1996 due to a lawsuit by some of the big contractors. But we need to bring that back, and that was another program that Collaborative was working on. As David said, we need to support more training, effective training programs that lead into viable skilled trades. And we need to create more pathways into the trade unions. When I spoke with the Minneapolis Building and Construction Trades group recently, they assured me that they're committed to making sure that people of color get into those areas.
Thank you. The next question deals with public education. And it reads as follows. Most Americans believe, including Democrats and Republicans in St. Paul, that the achievement gap in education is our greatest threat to our democracy and collective success. What would you advocate for in St. Paul to close that gap? And we'll start with David Young.
When I talk about great schools, I think about my daughter and the environment that she's going to come up with and the skills that she's going to need to succeed in the future. We talk about great schools, we're talking about making Minneapolis schools the best in the country. And that is something we can achieve because our children absolutely deserve it. That's done through funding. We have the shift that we have to pay back. We can't take money away from our schools and ask them to perform better. But we also need to look at funding programs that will innovate, that will give thought to new ways of learning and new ways of teaching and doing more work to further better prepare our children to succeed in the new economy.
David Boyd.
Well, education is a priority of mine due to the fact that my 4-year-old son is involved in a program over at the U, which I find to be a great model for our system here. He is far ahead where he's supposed to be. And I found that because the school has strong support of the community and the state of helping it grow. We need to bring back more community schooling. We need to stop farming out our best and our brightest to the suburbs. We need to bring them back within our district, within our community, and showing our other students within our district. It doesn't matter what your situation is. As long as you work hard and you get the help from your peers, besides your teachers, you'll succeed. We need to start working to develop stronger peer programs, mentorship programs. When I grew up, there was a program called Junior Achievement, which is still wrong, but you don't hear it as much. We need to start redeveloping that program, get funding, get more businesses to help these students after school and during school. We need to educate our children. That is our most important goal overall. And if we fail there, we fail completely. It doesn't matter if we're Democrat or Republican. Our future is our children, and that's our most important thing that we need to be working on, getting the schools back to funding and getting our children the best education that's out there possible.
John Olson.
I think education really should be the #1 priority for the state. I think early childhood education is vastly underfunded. If you go all the way through grade school, high school, we just don't give them the dollars that they need. And they're forced to cut programs that add to character of children, whether it's arts, music, sports, all those types of programs. People say, well, it's not really important. It is. It is important because it keeps children engaged. It gives them new experiences. We also need to focus on post-secondary opportunities. As well as in high school, you know, kids kind of go through an era where they decide, you know, maybe I don't want to go to college, but I really like working with my hands, right? I like working on my computer. There's different types of things that we need to recognize, and we need to make sure that we're encouraging those things. Post-secondary opportunities should be available for everyone. There shouldn't be barriers. That's how we're going to create a strong workforce. And if a child is denied post-secondary opportunity for education, that is just a shame and should not happen in this country.
Marcus Harkins.
Thank you. Well, I think one of the first things we need to do is reform the school funding structure. It's inherently inequitable when you're basing it on local property taxes, because if it's a low and moderate income community, they're at a disadvantage in a number of social ways. But you know, underfunding the schools where the greatest need is a disaster. And as we all know, our state is increasingly diversified. The demographics show that there's going to be a much higher growth rate in the percentage of students of color. So if we want to have a strong future, we have to start now by ensuring that they all have opportunities to access quality education. And that starts with an effective teacher in every classroom. So I know that there was a teacher effectiveness bill that was supported primarily by Republicans this year and last year. I support that. I'm going to cross party lines when our side is not on the right side of the issue. I think that we need to invest in more teachers of color. We need to obviously invest in smaller classrooms where there are those greater challenges. We need to offer the teachers that are in the classes that may have behavior challenges, give them more education assistance. We need to create ways to engage low-income students, their families. So I support the NAS program and their outreach to go into the homes and connect parents to opportunities to help support and advocate for their children. And I think we need universal preschool. And finally, we need to make sure that college is affordable, because if you're a low-income student from a household that has no college graduates, you're going to look at college as a hopeless option. Sorry.
Joe Mullery.
Thank you. Well, first of all, Marcus is correct in most states, but not in Minnesota, about the reliance on the property tax system and the injustice of that. But in Minnesota, almost all of the funds come from the state, so that we don't rely on property taxes for our schools. However, what I think that no one has mentioned is the fact that a lot of kids on the north side come to school behind others. And we really need to sink a lot of money into early childhood development, especially in our poor communities in this state. This includes health care. It includes programs to develop the prefrontal cortex issues like character judgment, socialization. Without those, children are found not to succeed in school, so no matter what you do. If the kid isn't ready for school, the teachers can correct that. Art Rolnick is the leader nationally on that. He just left our Federal Reserve System. We also need to increase the concentration aid, which goes to schools based on free and reduced lunch. We need to go back to more funding for immigrant children with language disabilities. We need a lot more training for teachers to work with children from various cultures. We also need to lessen the mental trauma in young kids' lives, which has been proven to actually physically affect the brain development. We need more mentor programs, and we also have to have a development into post-high school.
Time and request for a follow-up by Marcus Harkins.
Brief rebuttal. I'm not an expert on exactly how the schools are funded, but I've worked with a woman who led the Minnesota Parent-Teacher Association, and that's one of their top agenda items, and this woman is the expert on these issues. So I think that Joe is incorrect on this.
Well, let's follow that up if I may, because I think there may be a perception reality thing going on here in that I think there's the reality of the Minnesota Miracle was brought about any number of decades ago, where the state did step in to equalize education funding because there were great inequities in, depending on tax bases and such. And yet, each one of us, when we pull out the checkbook twice a year or once a month with our mortgage payments, if it's escrowed, we see a big chunk of the property tax that it says goes to the school district. So if I could ask Joe to maybe help us out with that discrepancy, and then Marcus can have a follow-up on that.
Okay, there are a couple things. A lot of that is for facilities. That is often funded on the local levy. And then the state allows districts to raise a certain amount by the local levy, but when you compare that to what the state's putting into the schools, it's very small. And it's also limited, and also Minneapolis as a whole has a better tax base than an awful lot of the state.
And Marcus, did you have a follow-up on that?
Sure. Obviously, Minnesota is better than most states, but we're not doing well enough in North Minneapolis. How many schools have closed in the past decade? How many schools do we have with these enormous gaps? Why do we have schools with the biggest gaps in the state? And finally, this may be a little off, but Joe Mullery, every time he grabs the mic, he says the same thing. I feel like I'm hearing a Skip CD. He's the leader on this and that, and that's not always correct.
Is there anybody else who wants to follow up on? Okay, Joe, go ahead.
Unfortunately, Marcus is wrong, and when I say I'm one of the leaders on something, I am. I didn't mention that I was a leader on this at all.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to follow up on this? Move on. Okay, we have a question from a delegate here, and it has to do with housing. What are your views on the current housing in North Minneapolis? Availability, programs for improvement, vacant housing, and solutions, and are existing solutions available to all the neighborhoods on the north side? And David Boyd gets to start on that one, and I'll be glad to repeat the question if
No, I
along the
understand.
line if you don't. Okay. Anyone else? I'm also glad to repeat the question.
I would say part of the solution to our housing problem is jobs. We need jobs to get people to come here. We need to make an incentive for people to move to North Minneapolis. We've got a lot of beautiful homes over here to where they're being torn down by the city because they're not being fixed or worked on. We've got a foreclosure problem that's ridiculous. So we need to set up some type of training program, which there are many of them out there, but we need to have a district-wide, we need to get the word out there district-wide for people who are hurting on a foreclosure basis that, hey, we're here to help you, here's what we're gonna do to help you. You know, we need to find a way to save people's lives. So that's the main thing about it. You lose your home, you lose your dignity. And there's so many people out there that are losing their dignity because things that they've worked for most of their lives, they've lost. For no fault of theirs, it's just the economy changed on them. So we need to start working methods and giving information out to help our people within our district. Also, we have a very bad foreclosure problem, statewide, but more so over here because of the predatory lenders that were out there. So we need to start working on better HIPAA laws and everything that will help people understand what they're getting into in reference to home ownership. Because a lot of people come from rentals and they don't understand there might be an additional $500 cost because now they're paying utilities versus where they may not have been before. So we need to start letting people inform really what they're getting into a little bit better.
John Olson.
True. No. There's several things I think involved in this question. One is the current housing stock in North Minneapolis. We have some beautiful homes in North Minneapolis. We also have some homes that have really run the course and are not going to be a viable option. And as the city goes through and tears down houses and has lots of vacant lots. We can't make some of the same mistakes that happened in the past where the city was allowed to bring in, I believe they were called dream homes, the modular homes on the back of the truck, and they just slapped them in and there was no garage. It was really, you know, a trailer is what it was. And it was disgraceful. It didn't fit into the neighborhood. It was not good quality housing. I think we need to really have a conversation and really a housing council that's made up of the city, the county, the state, local folks within the community, but also professionals that are in the field, whether those are realtors, contractors, and those types of things, to make sure that we're putting in great housing stock that people want. People want 3-car garages nowadays. I mean, that's the norm. When you come into Minneapolis, so many homes have a 1-car garage, and there's too many restrictions that allow, or that don't allow, to provide the amenities that people want to see in a house today. So we really need to take a comprehensive look at that, and elected officials are not always the best and brightest people to come up with a solution. We need the professionals at the table to help with that.
Marcus. Sure. What are your views on the current housing in North Minneapolis concerning availability, programs for improvement, and vacant housing, solutions, and are existing solutions available to all neighborhoods on the north side?
This is an important question. You all know, you all live here. Since 2007, right before the housing bubble burst, since that point, we've had over 10,000 foreclosures just in the city of Minneapolis, and over 50% of those have been in northern Minneapolis. The incumbent talks about being the leader, a preeminent expert on foreclosures in terms of predatory lending, but he slept on this housing crisis until after the bubble burst. I think that we need to do, as a state legislature, we need to support and hold accountable the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, and where the state has no jurisdiction, we need to put pressure on HUD. So many of us are living in houses where our mortgage is underwater, where we owe more than the actual property value. I think that we, as a state legislature, need to put pressure on the federal government to force these banks to write down our mortgages to the actual market value. That would do a great deal of stimulus, and they should have done that when they did TARP. With all of the depressed home values, I think there's a lot of opportunities if we fix up these homes where we could create affordable home ownership opportunities. I know a lot of you complain about not enough homeowners being in our community. We have a lot of opportunities to do that with the vacant housing, which is everywhere. There is a shortage of affordable rental housing, but I think we have a fair supply of that in North Minneapolis. We need to ensure that other communities create opportunities for affordable housing so that we can kind of deconcentrate the poverty. And I'm not talking about displacing people that want to live here, but just creating conditions to where we can improve the quality of life in North Minneapolis.
Joe Mulligan.
Thank you. And at the last debate we had, Mr. Harkus said that I wasn't a leader on foreclosure, which was kind of funny to the people at the legislature because they asked me about every bill. And the head of the Minnesotans for a Fair Economy was just in a couple weeks ago meeting with us and was specifically thanked me for all my leadership on this. Almost every bill that we've written has been come through me, and in fact this year we put together DFL legislative package on foreclosures, and 12 of the 16 provisions were out of my work. That's typical. A couple of my bills have been, 3 of them have gotten national attention, but that's a huge issue, and that's why I really dug into it once it came out as such a problem on the north side. I've introduced a lot of things that have been defeated by the Republicans, but we've also had some really great results. In fact, just a few nights ago I talked to a woman who talked about 2 laws that saved her house. Both of them were mine. However, we have to go further, and there's a lot of different programs. I'm talking to the city almost every 2 to 4 days about ways to help housing on the north side, get more ownership, home ownership for young working families. such things as land trust, the land bank. I'm an author of both of those. And last summer I got special programs for the north side into the tax bill where we can have...
I have to call time. David Young.
Redistricting showed us how horribly decimated the north side has been. We saw the east side grow all the way down to Broadway because so many thousands had lost their homes to foreclosure in the last 4 years. And so many thousands have left the district because they couldn't live here anymore. We need to work at the Capitol and at the community and amongst organizations. We need an advocate, someone that can connect people that are living here and struggling, people that are just hanging on to the jobs they have so they can hang on to their home. We need to have someone that can help connect them with the resources that exist so that they can continue to work in the community and raise a family here and build a stable, safe, happy home in this community. I will work, maybe as an advocate, maybe as a cheerleader, call it what you will, but to connect people with the solutions they need so that the people that are still here can live the great life that they deserve.
Okay, Marcus requested a follow-up. Marcus Harkis.
Yes, sir. Well, Joe, I did say that last week because I corrected you and you actually agreed with me on your follow-up that you were inappropriate for us, stating that you're the leader of the nation. And because of political reasons, you're not going to find any of his DFL colleagues in his caucus who are going to speak out against him, but they're doing this behind his back. And so the allegations that I cite to you are coming from people within the DFL party, people that work at the Capitol. And I'm not going to say that Joe hasn't done anything good. I think Joe has done some good advocacy on this issue. And it should be no surprise if other legislators are coming to him. We have the most foreclosures.
Your time is up on the follow-up. Okay, we have another question from a delegate, and that is, as the ethnic community has expanded, have you considered proper funding for children of ESL, English as a second language, background? What is the state role there? I'm assuming that's the delegate's question. What can you do as legislator to be sure that there's proper funding for English as a second language programs? And start with John Olson.
Well, unfortunately, I think the thought at the Capitol by most of the folks that represent the citizens of the state of Minnesota is that's a local problem. Folks are coming in from different countries and they are locating here, which is great. It makes for a very diverse community. It makes for wonderful experiences as far as understanding other parts of the world, other cultures. And I think it should be a priority of the state to provide funding sources for communities that are receiving large numbers of immigrants, rather than just dump it on the local government and saying, folks, that's your problem, you take care of it. Because that seems to be the attitude, and that needs to change. So I would certainly author legislation that would enable funding for cities to do that and move forward and welcome new immigrants so that they can become members of our society rather than feel like they're outcasts or they're not counted and they don't belong.
Marcus Harkis.
The question was, have we thought about this? And honestly, I hadn't thought about this, but I do think that it's important. I believe that immigration is a good thing because immigrants come here they infuse a drive, an energy, and they invest a lot in our communities. And if we don't ensure that the children of immigrants, particularly from the more disadvantaged groups, are not educated well, then we're just going to have these unintended consequences of, growing the underclass. So we definitely need to make sure that ESL families have access to the resources that will ensure that kids are successful in school and beyond.
Joe Mullery.
This is a big issue. I work with the councils of color, the 3 councils of color, not as much with the Native American, but with the Council on Black Minnesotans, Council on Asian Minnesotans, and Council on Latino Minnesotans. And this is an issue for all three of them, and of course it's a huge issue in our district. The big problem is that over the last few years, they've cut hugely back on the amount of money put into it, and they've also cut back on the number of years that a child qualifies for it. So what we need to do is restore the number of years or expand the number of years from what it was previously, and we have to increase the amount per child in the program.
David Young.
At the legislature, I will support the programs and the guidelines that will keep people in the program to get the foundation that they need to be a success, and I will support funding of the programs because we will all reap a benefit when all the members are geared up and ready to thrive. I am good at reaching out with people and helping. In southwestern Minnesota, there's tons of people that are dealing with ESL issues as you see immigrants coming to that community, and you can find advocates and partners, and we can change the status quo at the Capitol and make sure that we're funding these efforts so that all the children are set up with a solid foundation for their future.
David Boyd.
As a legislator, I would support this highly. I believe it's a very important thing to us as a nationwide, besides here in North Minneapolis, where we're predominantly a mixed community. I spend a lot of time working with people who are from different cultures and their children and everything. And if we could build their children's language capability up stronger, they can assimilate faster into the community. And the minority community is the fastest growing small business community nationwide. And why not have we support that here within our district? We have a large variety of folks that live within the district. This is a great opportunity for us to put more funding in ESL, making it stronger, and providing better education for our future citizens of our nation. Thanks.
Thank you. We have another delegate question. What priority do you give to veterans and recent returning veterans in reference to job placement and training? Let me check with Marcus Harkness.
One of my friends is one of the best advocates for veterans in the country, and so I definitely agree that we need to support veterans and reentering society. We need to make sure that they have the health care that they need, because a lot of them suffer traumatic brain injuries and other traumas just from the horrors of war. I think that there should be some preference in hiring for veterans. I agree that they have a lot of skills and they have a lot of discipline that they can provide to employers. So I would definitely advocate for opportunities, employment opportunities for them.
Joe Murray.
Thank you. And this is a subject that is very important to me. In fact, I used to be for a long time, I was the liaison between the House DFL caucus and the veterans groups in this state, and so I've worked very closely with them, and also the Hennepin County Veteran Service Officer has told me that I'm the one he comes to every time there's a problem over there. So I'm very interested in this, but we do have, in the last couple years, we have put in a lot of new provisions in the law to help veterans preference and also to help veterans training and going to college for very low income. We've given under the governor's program, which I signed on to as a co-author, we give them a credit also for businesses for hiring them. So we are doing a lot. In fact, now some of the minority communities are coming to me and saying that it's getting a little overbalanced. So that's a tough decision right now because both are really needy.
David Young.
We have a duty to honor our veterans, and we have a duty to make sure that if they come back from serving our country with some challenges, that we work to make sure they have all the resources that they deserve because they paid such an important price for our freedoms. We need to make sure that when they come back from serving, that any of the support they need, those support systems are available and well-funded and communicated to them so that they can get access to them. And then we need, on the hiring side, we need to work with businesses to realize that the training and the experience that they have in the military can easily translate into the business world, and that these people are great assets to our community and can be great assets to companies. And they can be a great part of our future.
David Boyd.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What priority do you give to veterans and recent returning veterans in reference to job placement and training?
Well, as a veteran myself, I had to place a high priority of getting retrained to assimilate back into civilian life. There's a big difference between military life and civilian life. When you're done with the military, but they don't train you how to be a human being again, back into the world. So we need to get training to re-assimilate our soldiers back into the real world, you know, as we could say, as we call it, the world here. Also, we need to set up better programs. The state has done a great job starting out getting programs for the veterans, but we need to set up better programs with medical, mental health, alcoholism, and a lot of these soldiers come home very angry for one reason or another. So we need to spend more time talking with them, understanding what they're going through and what they've been through. We need to have better housing for them and better education. Our education program is not that great for veterans. It needs to be a lot better. They sacrifice a lot for us to do the things that we do. So we need to do everything that we possibly can to make sure that they have all the benefits that they need to help grow, and they'd be a great asset here to the north side, because with veterans within the community, they will help it grow stronger and help stabilize and curb the crime, because they won't put up with the BS that goes on.
John Olson.
It's pretty simple. Men and women of our military made a commitment to serve us and protect us, serve this country. We need to honor the commitment that we made to them and provide them with the opportunities and the training that they need to come back to civilian life and prosper. So I think it's pretty simple.
Thank you. And one moment, please.
We do have a question from one of our elder camp, just our leader over here, Flo Caspi. Can you go ahead and ask the delegation, the candidates, please?
Yeah, first of all, where are the hoodies?
It's right here.
Has anyone heard of Trayvon? Hey, okay. I haven't needed my whole life. I just built it. It's called a diaphragm, and I know how to use it. I would like to know what you're going to do about the Republican agenda of undermining collective bargaining rights, working with the NRA in enacting and passing gun laws across the country. Florida is just one of 25 other states that have identical laws. And Mark Dayton, thank God, just vetoed one that came out. But they're trying all the time, undermining collective bargaining, undermining public education, undermining reproductive rights and access to health care. What are you going to do in the legislature to address that, as well as to work with the DFL statewide, placing those Republicans over there and getting a DFL majority in both houses of our legislature?
Joe Muller.
Well, on the NRA issue, I'm often the one doing the leading on the fight against it. In fact, I was the one that gave the speech, but that's a hard-line issue. The Republicans all vote for it, and the Democrats are afraid of them too. In fact, it's so strange that one time I had a bill in that merely gave a probation officer the right to see if a person had a gun permit, that they had to go into their home. And suddenly I got flooded, everybody got flooded with a email from the NRA that Mallory was taking away their guns. That's how crazy it is over there. Basically, we have to get out and explain the facts to the Republicans, or to the voters, I'm sorry, not to the Republicans, to the voters. We have to have a coherent message. I just talked to about 3 days ago, I talked to Mark Dayton about how we have to coordinate between our caucus and them on all these different issues. I'm actually been asked by my caucus to go out and go around the state and talk about the public safety issues and then a lot of the consumer issues, because I'm the leader on that for our caucus. And so that's what we have to do. We have to form a united effort to defeat them, because it's a disaster.
David Young.
These are all attacks on the core of who we are as DFLers. They're attacks on who we are as good Minnesotans. They are not in sync with what we feel are issues that make us who we are. So I will, in 2 ways, I will be an advocate, a cheerleader, leading marches, getting people revved up, helping get out voters, to get them rallied so that we can defeat the Republicans and take back the legislature. And so that's the community side. That's here in North Minneapolis, making that change happen. The other side of things happens in St. Paul, where on a day-to-day basis, there will be Republicans we have to work with, and we have to let them see the error of the ways and see how it impacts regular people's lives and the harm that if they're doing the work of people that are just standing on issues like guns and taking away women's rights to choose, that they're doing a great harm, and they're doing a great harm to the future of Minnesota, and help them see the error of the ways, and the ways that if we work together, there are things we can accomplish that makes Minnesotans better rather than tearing down what we have.
David Boyd.
For me, this is a core problem of the Republicans trying to destroy the Democratic Party. We need someone up there that's going to advocate for us in our district. We also need someone who is willing to work with the Republicans on our goals, not theirs. We need to focus on our goals, not theirs. I repeat that again, focus on our goals, not theirs, because they will do everything in their power to change your mind. I have a couple neighbors who are Republicans like me, consistently bombard me with different information of Republican views, and I continually tell them, we have a priority that we need to do for us. I'm willing to work with you, but my goal number one is the party and doing what's going to be the best for the party and for my district.
John Olson.
Gotta be careful what I say here. I think one of the things that disappointed me about today was question 1, when it was asked, will you support the endorsement process? And our current state representative said he didn't know. It's, the answer is this, folks. We have to endorse a candidate next Saturday, and we have to move on. We as a community, we have to be active, and we have to support candidates throughout the metro area, throughout the state, that are going to defeat the Republicans. We got to throw them out. If you pay attention to what they've passed and what they're trying to pass at the Capitol, they're nuts. You're not going to talk to them. You're not going to change their minds. It's just what they believe. And it's mean. It's just downright mean legislation that they're proposing. They're trying to go around the governor. Put it on the Constitution. Let's have a constitutional amendment. The right to work, the constitutional amendment on marriage, the voter ID law. I mean, my goodness, it's just mean-spirited. And the Castle Doctrine law was, it just blew me away. The only way that we're going to change this is if we get them kicked out and get the Democrats back in control. Nobody up here on this stage is going to make that happen. None of us. It's us together. The voters the people. We don't need to be beating ourselves up after the convention, wasting our time. We need to help folks in swing districts that can throw the Republicans out and take back our state.
Marcus Harkis.
I was wearing my hoodie the previous 3 days. I just didn't think it'd be appropriate today. And there's a million hoodies for Trayvon event at the U of M next Thursday, 6 p.m. But what are we going to do? I asked this question a few years ago, because the Republican Party that we have today, they're dominated by extremists, by anti-social, anti-government people. If they're anti-government, they should probably stay out of the government, and we need to remove them. So I agree that one of the best ways to defeat them is we need to just paint the picture to people who are disengaged. We need to paint the picture to people who may be moderate Republicans. We need to let them know that your values are not represented by these people. These people have no prioritization of the people. So as he said, we need to work on those swing districts. We live in a safe district here, but I also agree, not only do we need to get rid of these teabagger Republicans, we also need to get rid of stiff-necked, spineless Democrats also, status quo politicians. So I will defeat Republican bills at the Capitol by, as you mentioned, bringing people to the Capitol. We need to not stand there alone as a legislator with the other members of our committee. We need to fill up these hearing rooms when we have bills like the Castle Doctrine being heard. We need to disrupt the process. I believe in civil disobedience in matters such as these, where they are so extreme. And so you can count on me being an advocate that will not settle for any of their nonsense. And I'll bring people into the process, people who are affected by the issues, to testify on their own behalf.
Thank you. Well, the clock on the wall tells us that we have to move to closing statements. Need to be sensitive to the fact that we have another forum coming in. And so we will start the closing statements. We have a number of delegate questions we were not able to get to, and I was told that they will be forwarded on for next week's questions as well. And we'll start